He noticed the kid before he really looked at her. Not in a dramatic way, just one of those small, automatic things. A stroller at the edge of the sidewalk, a child sitting a little too quietly, just watching people pass, like they were trying to figure something out. What threw him off wasn't the kid, it was how long he kept looking, like something about that face wasn't new to him. Just out of place. He almost walked past, probably should have, but then he heard his name. Not loud, not emotional, just familiar, Harrison. And when he turned, it wasn't the city that felt strange anymore. It was her, Kiara, standing there like the last 4 years, hadn't needed to explain themselves. No anger, no awkwardness, no rush to fill the silence, just still. He said the first thing that came to mind, the kind of thing people say when they're buying time. Hey, it's been a while. She nodded like that was enough, and it would have been, if not for the way the child looked at him again. Same quiet stare, same something. He felt it then, not a thought, not even a full realization, just a shift, like his body knew before his mind caught up. Cute kid, he said. Kiara didn't smile, didn't say thank you, didn't say anything at all. She just looked at him in a way that made the air feel heavier, and that's when something old started coming back. Not clearly, not all at once, just pieces. A night he didn't think about anymore. Rain against glass. A conversation he had already filed away as done. You can have a child, but not mine. He swallowed, looked at the kid again, this time slower, more careful. How old? He asked, and even to him, his voice didn't sound right. 3, she said, and that was it. Nothing dramatic happened. Nobody raised their voice, but something settled in his chest that didn't move after that, like the past hadn't passed at all, like it had just been. Waiting. Welcome to Mr. KingswellStories, where powerful life lessons come through unforgettable stories about love, betrayal, family, and second chances. If you're new here, subscribe and join us for more stories that make you think differently about life. And before we begin, tell me in the comments what time it is and where you're watching from. Harrison didn't ask the next question right away, because part of him already knew, and the other part wasn't ready to hear it out loud. So instead, he stood there, half turned toward her, like he hadn't fully committed to staying, but not leaving either. The city kept moving around them. Someone brushed past his shoulder, muttering something under their breath. A bus exhaled at the corner. The crosswalk signal clicked over, again and again, like it was reminding them both that time hadn't stopped just because they had, but it felt like it had. Kiara didn't shift, didn't try to fill the silence. Her hand rested lightly on the stroller handle, fingers still, like she wasn't bracing for anything. Just there. That was the part that unsettled him more than anything. She wasn't tense, wasn't guarded. She just looked like someone who had already had every conversation that mattered, and didn't need another one. Harrison cleared his throat slightly. You live around here? He asked. It came out casual, almost automatic. The kind of question you ask when you're pretending this is just a normal run-in. Kiara gave a small nod. Not far. That was it. No elaboration. No, how about you? Just enough to answer the question. Nothing more. He shifted his weight, glancing briefly down the street, like he was expecting something else to pull his attention. Nothing did. So, what have you been up to? He tried again. He heard it as soon as he said it. Too broad. Too late. Too disconnected from what was actually standing right in front of him. Kiara's lips pressed together for a second, not annoyed, not amused, just aware. A lot, she said simply. Another pause. Then she added, life didn't really slow down. Something about the way she said it made him feel like he had missed more than just time, like there were whole versions of her he had never even been part of. He nodded slowly. Yeah, I can see that. His eyes drifted again, back to the stroller. He tried not to stare this time, tried to make it quick, but it wasn't. The child was watching him again. Same quiet focus, not shy, not playful, just observant. Harrison felt that same strange pull in his chest. Unfamiliar, uncomfortable. He looked away first. You're doing this on your own? He asked. It slipped out before he could filter it. Not judgmental, just searching. Kiara didn't react right away. She adjusted the blanket near the child's legs, smoothing it out like it needed fixing even though it didn't. "I'm not alone," she said. Her voice stayed even. "My family's here. I've got people." Harrison nodded, but something in him tightened anyway. That wasn't really what he meant, and she knew it. Another silence settled in, this one heavier, because now they were both aware of what wasn't being said. Harrison rubbed the side of his jaw, a habit he hadn't even realized he still had. "You look good," he said finally. It sounded incomplete, like the sentence stopped before it could get honest. Kiara gave a small shrug. "I've been okay. Not great, not happy, just okay." But it didn't sound like survival. It sounded like something steadier than that. Harrison studied her for a second longer than he should have. There were things he noticed now that he wouldn't have before. The way she stood, the way she didn't rush to respond, the way she didn't try to soften anything for him. It wasn't distance. It was decision, like she had already decided what he was to her and wasn't adjusting it just because he showed up again. "You still working in finance?" he asked. Kiara nodded. "Yeah, but not the same way." "What do you mean?" "I work for myself now." That caught him off guard. "You started your own thing?" "Yeah." No pride in it. No need to impress him. Just fact. Harrison let out a small breath. "That's big." Kiara tilted her head slightly. "It's mine." Something about that landed differently. Not flashy, not ambitious in the way he was used to hearing it. Just grounded. And for a second, he didn't know how to respond to that, because everything in his world had always been about scale, growth, visibility. But this sounded like something else entirely. Before he could figure out what to say, the child shifted again. Small movement, but enough to draw his attention back. This time, the child's hand rested against the side of the stroller. Tiny fingers, relaxed. Harrison stared for a second too long. Something about it, the shape, the stillness. It lingered in his mind, longer than it should have. He swallowed. "You said 3?" he asked, like he needed to hear it again to make sure it didn't change. Kiara nodded once. "Just turned 3. His chest felt tight again. That same quiet pressure, like something was building, but not fast. Slow, inevitable. He glanced at her. She was already looking at him, not curious, not confused, just watching him catch up. And for the first time since this started, Harrison felt exposed, not because she said anything, but because she didn't need to. "You named them Amari?" he asked, his voice lower now. Kiara's expression softened, but only slightly. "Yeah." There was something in the way she said the name, not sentimental, not performative, just certain. Harrison nodded slowly. "It fits." He didn't know why he said that, but it felt true. Another pause, longer this time, the kind that doesn't feel empty, but full of things neither person is ready to say yet. A car passed behind them. Someone laughed across the street. Normal life. Completely disconnected from whatever this moment was. Harrison looked down again, at Amari, then back at Kiara. There was a question sitting right there. Obvious now, too obvious to ignore anymore. But still, he hesitated, because asking it would change everything. And not asking it, that didn't feel like an option anymore. His mouth opened slightly, then closed again. Kiara didn't rush him, didn't help him, didn't look away. She just stood there, waiting, not for the answer, for him to be honest enough to ask. And that's when Harrison realized this wasn't about finding something out. It was about facing something he had already been part of. Without knowing it, he exhaled slowly. "Kiara," he started, his voice tighter now. "I need to ask you something." Her grip on the stroller didn't change, but something in her eyes did. Not fear, not tension, just readiness. "Okay," she said, and for a second, Harrison wished she hadn't answered so easily, because now there was nothing left to hide behind, nothing left to delay, just the question and whatever came after it. "Is this?" The words didn't come out clean. They stalled halfway, Like even forming the question felt like stepping into something he couldn't walk back from. Harrison looked at her, but not fully. His eyes kept drifting, back to the stroller, then away again, like he was trying to build the courage in pieces. Mine. There it was. Quiet, careful, too late. The city noise didn't stop, but it faded for him, like everything pulled back just enough to leave that question sitting between them, heavy and exposed. Kiara didn't answer right away. She didn't rush to fill the silence, didn't react the way most people would when something that big gets said out loud. She just watched him, not cold, not soft, just steady. And that steadiness did something to him, because it meant she had already been here, emotionally, mentally, long before he ever caught up. Harrison swallowed. His throat felt dry. I didn't know, he added quickly, like that needed to be said before anything else. I mean, if I had. He stopped himself, because even to him, it sounded unfinished, weak. Kiara's gaze didn't shift. You didn't want to know, she said, same tone as before, no accusation, no raised voice, just truth, placed exactly where it belonged. Harrison felt it land, not sharp, not loud, but deep. He exhaled slowly, his shoulders dropping just a little, like something in him gave way instead of pushing back. For once, he didn't correct her, didn't defend himself, because he couldn't, because she was right. The silence stretched again, but now it felt different, less uncertain, more confirmed. Harrison looked at Amari again, longer this time. He wasn't trying to avoid it anymore. He was looking, really looking, the shape of the eyes, the way the child didn't fidget much, that quiet stillness again, not shy, not nervous, just observing. Harrison felt something shift in his chest, not panic, not even shock, something heavier, something slower, recognition. And that was worse, because recognition didn't leave room for denial. He let out a breath, almost under his breath. 3, he repeated, like saying it again might make it feel less real. It didn't. His mind started moving without permission, back to that night, rain against the windows, the way Kiara stood near the door, the way he stayed seated, controlled, certain. You can have a child, but not mine. His jaw tightened. He looked down for a second, then back up at her. You knew, he said, not accusing, just trying to understand. Kiara nodded once. I found out before that night. That hit him differently, because now it wasn't just about what he didn't know. It was about what she knew, and still walked into. Harrison ran a hand over the back of his neck. You were going to tell me? She didn't answer immediately. Her eyes drifted for a second, not away from him, but somewhere just past him, like she was remembering something she had already put down. I thought about it, she said, simple, honest. Then she looked back at him. But I needed to feel safe first. That word stayed in the air longer than anything else. Safe. Harrison felt it settle in his chest in a way that didn't sit right, because he already knew that wasn't what he gave her, not even close. He let out a quiet breath. I didn't, he started, then stopped, because whatever came next would sound like an excuse, and for once, he didn't want to hide behind one, so he changed direction. I thought I was being clear, he said, instead. Kiara gave a small nod. You were. That surprised him. He frowned slightly, but not in the way you think, she added. Harrison looked at her, waiting. She adjusted the stroller slightly, more out of habit than necessity. You weren't confused, she said. You weren't unsure. A small pause. You chose. There was no weight added to the word, no emotion pushed into it, and somehow that made it heavier. Harrison looked down again, because now the memory felt different, not like a moment, like a decision, a clean one, and that meant this. All of this wasn't some accident. It was a consequence. He nodded slowly, almost to himself. Yeah, he said quietly. Another silence, but this one didn't feel avoidable. It felt earned. Amari shifted again, letting out a soft sound. Nothing distressed, just a small, natural movement. Harrison's eyes moved instantly. Instinct. He didn't even realize it. Kiara noticed. She didn't say anything about it, but something in her expression changed, Just slightly. Not softer, not harder, just aware. Harrison stepped a little closer, not invading space, just enough to see more clearly. Amari looked up at him again. Same calm stare. No fear, no recognition, just curiosity. And that did something to him, because this wasn't a moment he could step into and fix. There was no connection there. Not yet. Maybe not ever. And for the first time, Harrison felt the full weight of time, not as something he lost, but as something that moved on without him. What's their name again? He asked, even though he already knew. Amari. He nodded. Slower this time, like he was trying to hold on to it. Amari, he repeated quietly. The name felt unfamiliar in his mouth, but not wrong. He looked at Kiara again. There was something he wanted to say, something that felt necessary, but nothing came out right. I would have... He started, then stopped, because he didn't even know if that was true. Not back then, and lying now would only make it worse. So he let the sentence die. Kiara didn't help him finish it, didn't rescue him from it. She just stood there, complete, whole in a way that didn't need him to understand it. Harrison let out a slow breath. I missed everything, he said finally. It wasn't dramatic, didn't sound like a confession. Just a fact he had just realized. Kiara didn't respond, because there was nothing to argue with, nothing to correct. He looked at Amari again, longer, more carefully, trying to take in something he had no place in. First steps, first words, sick days, late nights, all of it, gone, not taken from him, not hidden, just lived without him. And that realization didn't hit all at once. It settled, slow, heavy, permanent. Harrison stepped back slightly, not because he wanted to leave, because he didn't know where to stand anymore. This changes things, he said, more to himself than to her. Kiara's expression didn't shift. It doesn't change what already happened. That landed clean, final. Harrison nodded, because again, she was right. He looked at her one more time, really looked, and for the first time since seeing her again, he understood something clearly. She wasn't waiting for anything from him, not an apology, not an explanation, not even regret. She had already moved through all of that, without him, and now, he was the one catching up. Too late. He exhaled slowly. Okay, he said, not agreement, not acceptance, just acknowledgement, because there was nothing else left to say that would matter right now. Nothing that would change what was already standing in front of him, alive, real, untouched by anything he might try to offer now. And for the first time in his life, Harrison felt what it meant to face something he couldn't negotiate, fix, or outthink, just live with. And he didn't know what to do with that yet. He didn't try to stop her. That part came later, when he realized he probably should have said something more, done something different. But in the moment, Harrison just stood there. Kiara gave a small nod, not dismissive, not emotional, just done with what needed to be said. Take care, Harrison, she said. Not we'll talk, not I'll call you, nothing that left a door open, just closure, spoken like a normal sentence. Then she turned, one hand steady on the stroller, and started walking, not fast, not like she was trying to get away, just continuing her day, like this hadn't disrupted anything for her, like this moment wasn't something she needed to recover from. Harrison watched her go, watched the stroller roll over the uneven sidewalk, one small bump at a time, watched the back of her coat move slightly with each step, watched until the distance between them stopped feeling physical and started feeling permanent. He didn't move, didn't call out, didn't even check his phone. He just stood there long enough for it to become noticeable. A man paused in the middle of everything, like he forgot what he was supposed to be doing next. Someone brushed past him again, harder this time. Hey man. Harrison blinked, stepping slightly to the side, without really registering the words. The world came back in pieces. Noise first, then movement, then expectation, but none of it landed the way it usually did, because something underneath all of it had shifted, not dramatically, not all at once, just enough. He started walking, no direction, just moving because standing still didn't feel right anymore. But walking didn't help either. Every few steps his mind pulled him back to the same image, Amari's face, that quiet stare, not reaching for him, not recognizing him, just existing without him. Harrison exhaled through his nose, slower this time, trying to steady something that didn't have a clear shape yet. He turned down a side street without thinking, less crowded, quieter, the kind of place people passed through, not stayed in. That felt right, because staying anywhere right now felt impossible. He stopped near a closed storefront, dark windows reflecting a version of him he didn't quite connect to. Same coat, same posture, same face, but something behind it had changed. He leaned one hand lightly against the glass, not for balance, just to feel something solid. I missed everything. He said it again, out loud this time. It sounded different hearing it, less like a thought, more like a fact that had already settled. He closed his eyes briefly, and for a second, the past didn't feel distant. It felt immediate. That night, Kiara, standing by the door, the rain, the way he didn't stand up, didn't walk toward her, didn't ask the questions that mattered. He stayed where he was, controlled, certain, comfortable. You can have a child, but not mine. His jaw tightened. Harrison opened his eyes again, stared at his reflection. You said that, he muttered, not in disbelief, in recognition. There was no version of that moment that could be softened now, no way to reinterpret it, no missing context. He had meant it, at the time, and that was the part that sat wrong now, because it meant this. Everything that followed didn't come from confusion. It came from clarity, his choice. He pushed off the glass and started walking again, slower now, less aimless, but not going anywhere in particular, just processing. That word felt too clean for what this was. This wasn't a realization you processed. It was something you carried, something that settled into places you didn't know were open. He reached the corner and paused again. Traffic moved in front of him. People, crossing, phones out, lives in motion. He stayed where he was, because for the first time in a long time, he didn't have anywhere to be that mattered more than this. He thought about calling someone, didn't know who. There wasn't a person in his life he could say this to without it turning into something else. Advice, damage control, perspective. He didn't want any of that, not right now, because none of it would change what had already happened, and that was the part he couldn't get past. Not yet. He crossed the street without really checking the light. A car slowed, honking briefly. He lifted a hand in apology without looking, kept walking. His mind circled back again, not to Kiara this time, to Amari. 3 years, 3 full years of a life he didn't know. He tried to imagine it, couldn't, because there was nothing to attach it to. No memories, no starting point, just absence. And that absence felt heavier than anything he had lost recently. He stopped again, hands resting at his sides now, no tension, just, wait, I wasn't there, he said quietly. It wasn't dramatic, didn't carry emotion in the way people expected, but it was honest, and honesty, without anything to protect it, felt different. He let out a breath, longer this time, then something else followed. Not a plan, not a decision, just a realization. He couldn't fix this, not in the way he was used to fixing things. There was no strategy, no conversation that could reset the timeline, no version of himself he could present that would undo 3 years of absence. That part was done, final, and for someone like Harrison, that was unfamiliar territory, because everything in his life had always been adjustable, negotiable, recoverable. This wasn't. He turned slightly, leaning against a street light now. The metal was cold against his back, grounding, real. For a few seconds, he just stayed there, letting everything settle, not pushing it away, not organizing it into something useful, just letting it exist. And slowly, something else started forming. Not hope, not regret, something quieter, responsibility, not in a dramatic sense, not in a I'll fix everything way, just acknowledgement. He had done this, not intentionally, not maliciously, but clearly, directly, And now, he had to live with what that meant. Harrison looked down the street again. People still moving, life still happening. Kiara, somewhere out there. Amari with her, growing, learning, living a life that didn't include him. He exhaled once more, then pushed himself off the pole, started walking again, this time with a little more direction, not because he knew what to do next, but because standing still wasn't going to teach him anything. And for the first time in a long time, Harrison didn't try to outrun the feeling, didn't bury it under work, didn't distract himself with something easier. He let it stay, uncomfortable, incomplete, real, because something in him understood now. This wasn't a moment that passed. This was one that stayed, and whatever came next would have to start from here. What unsettled Harrison the most wasn't just what he had lost. It was how clearly he could see it now, not as something dramatic, not as some big love story he ruined, but in small moments he hadn't paid attention to when they were happening. That's what stayed with him as he walked. The small things. 2 years earlier, Kiara hadn't stood out the way people usually did in those rooms. She wasn't loud, didn't try to work the crowd, didn't laugh too hard at jokes that weren't funny just to stay visible. She stayed near the edge of the space at that startup mixer in Soma, a drink in her hand she barely touched, listening more than talking. Harrison noticed her because she didn't move like everyone else. No performance, no urgency, just present. He had been halfway through a conversation he wasn't interested in when his attention drifted, then stayed. It took him a few minutes before he excused himself and walked over. "Looks like you're the only one here not trying to sell something," he said. It wasn't his best line. He knew that. Kiara glanced at him, then back at the room. "Maybe I just haven't found the right person yet." There was a pause. Then she looked at him again, just long enough to make it clear she knew exactly what she had said. Harrison smiled slightly. That was new. Their first real conversation didn't feel like networking. It started with work, sure, what she did, what he did, but it didn't stay there. Kiara asked questions most people didn't. Not, "What's your company doing next quarter?" More like, "Do you actually enjoy it?" Harrison hesitated before answering. "That didn't happen often." "I'm good at it," he said. "That's not what I asked." She didn't smile when she said it, didn't soften it, just waited. He looked at her for a second, then let out a small breath. Sometimes that seemed to satisfy her. For now, what surprised him wasn't that she challenged him. It was that she didn't seem impressed by him, at least not in the way he was used to. She listened, but she didn't lean in, didn't adjust herself to match his energy, didn't make space for him to dominate the conversation. She just stayed where she was, equal. That wasn't something he encountered often, and it pulled him in more than he expected. Their relationship didn't move fast, no sudden declarations, no dramatic shift. It built in pieces. Late dinners after her workdays ran long, walking along the Embarcadero, stopping mid-conversation because she'd get distracted by something small, a street musician, a dog pulling too hard on its leash, a couple arguing quietly like they thought nobody noticed. "You always do that?" Harrison asked once. "Do what?" "Watch people like that." Kiara shrugged. "People tell you everything without saying anything." He glanced at the couple across the street. "What are they saying?" She studied them for a second. "He wants her to forgive him." Harrison raised an eyebrow. "That's specific." "She already did," Kiara added. "That's why she's mad." He looked back at her. "You always this confident about things like that?" She smiled slightly. "No, but I pay attention." That was the thing about Kiara. She paid attention to things he avoided. Not aggressively, not in a way that forced him to respond, but enough that he felt it. She noticed when he deflected, when he changed topics, when he answered questions without actually answering them. "You do that a lot," she said one night over dinner. "Do what?" "Answer without saying anything real." Harrison leaned back in his chair slightly. "I just don't overshare." Kiara nodded, like she expected that answer. Or, "You don't know how to." That landed closer than he liked. He took a sip of his drink, letting the silence sit for a second. "I know how to," he said. "Then why don't you?" He didn't respond, and she didn't push. That was the balance between them. She opened doors, but she didn't force him to walk through them. Kiara told him about her life in pieces too. Not all at once, not like a story she had rehearsed, more like memories that came up naturally. Sunday mornings at church, where the music felt louder than anything else during the week. Her mother calling every Saturday like it was part of the schedule. Her aunt who didn't let anything slide, not attitude, not excuses, not silence. That sounds intense, Harrison said once. Kiara laughed softly. It's love. He nodded, but something about that didn't fully connect for him. Love, in his world, looked different. Quieter, more controlled, less involved. There were moments when everything between them felt easy, natural, like they didn't have to think about what came next. And then there were moments where something shifted, subtle, but noticeable, like when conversations got too close to something real. What do you want long term? Kiara asked one night as they walked back to his car. Harrison kept his eyes forward. I'm building something. That's work, she said. I'm asking about your life. He paused slightly, just enough for her to notice. I don't think that far ahead, he said. Kiara stopped walking. He took a step before realizing she wasn't beside him anymore. When he turned back, she was watching him. You don't, she repeated. No. She studied him for a second, then nodded. Okay, but the way she said it didn't sound like agreement. It sounded like adjustment. That's where the gaps started becoming clearer. Not loud, not confrontational, just present. Kiara noticed what he didn't say. Harrison noticed what she stopped asking. They didn't fight about it, didn't even address it directly most of the time. They just moved around it, and for a while, that worked, because what they had in between those gaps felt real enough to hold on to, at least for her. For him, it felt manageable, and that difference mattered more than either of them said out loud. Looking back now, Harrison could see it. The imbalance, not in effort, not in care, but in depth. Kiara was building something emotional, something layered, something that required honesty. He was maintaining something, keeping it steady, controlled, safe. And the problem with control is that it doesn't leave room for things you can't predict, or feelings you don't fully understand. But back then, it didn't feel like a problem. It felt like things were working, until they weren't. And by the time that shift happened, it was already too late to fix it the way he was used to fixing things. Because this wasn't about adjusting strategy. It was about something he had never really learned how to hold in the first place. And Kiara, she had been carrying more of it than he ever realized. The first time Kiara found out she was pregnant, she didn't tell anyone for 3 days. Not because she didn't want to, because she didn't know how to hold it yet. She sat on the edge of her bed that morning, the test still on the bathroom counter, like it might change if she gave it time. It didn't. 2 lines. Clear, certain, real. She let out a slow breath, one hand resting flat against her stomach, even though nothing had changed yet. Not physically, not visibly, but something had. She just didn't have language for it. Not yet. When she finally told Harrison, it wasn't planned. They were at his place, late, both of them half distracted. Him answering emails, her sitting on the couch scrolling through something she wasn't really reading. I need to tell you something, she said. He didn't look up right away. Yeah? I'm pregnant. That got his attention. His laptop closed slowly, not rushed, not panicked, just deliberate. Okay, he said. Not excitement, not fear, just acknowledgement. Kiara watched him carefully. You don't have anything else to say? Harrison leaned back slightly. I'm thinking. That was always his answer when something didn't fit into his system right away. Thinking, processing, evaluating. Kiara nodded, but something in her chest tightened. Because this didn't feel like something you should have to calculate. The miscarriage came quietly. No warning, no big moment. Just a slow shift from discomfort to something that didn't feel right. The hospital room was too clean, too still. The kind of place where people lowered their voices without being asked. The doctor said all the right things. These things happen. You'll be able to try again. It's more common than people think. Kiara nodded through all of it. Didn't cry right away. Didn't react the way people expected. She just listened. Like if she stayed still enough, it wouldn't feel as real. Harrison was there. Physically, He sat in the chair next to her bed, hands folded, posture straight, like he was waiting for instructions. "You okay?" he asked at one point. Kiara stared at the wall. "I don't know." He nodded. "Let me know if you need anything." That was the problem. She didn't know what she needed, and he didn't know how to offer anything beyond that. Afterward, things between them didn't break. They just changed shape, subtly. Conversations got shorter, quieter. Kiara stopped bringing certain things up. Not because she didn't feel them, because she didn't trust where they would land. Harrison didn't ask, not in a deeper way. He checked in. "Everything good? You feeling better?" But it stayed surface level, like he was making sure the situation was handled, not understanding what it did to her. Nights felt different after that. Even when they were in the same space, there was distance, not physical, something harder to point to. Kiara would lie awake sometimes, staring at the ceiling, her mind moving in circles she didn't say out loud. Harrison would be beside her, asleep or pretending to be. She never knew which, so when she found out again, it didn't feel the same. There was no pause, no sitting on the edge of the bed trying to understand it. Just stillness. She stood in the bathroom, looking at the test, and instead of hope, she felt fear, not of the baby, of everything around it. She didn't tell Harrison, not that day, not the next, not the next. 3 weeks passed. 3 quiet weeks of carrying something he didn't know about. 3 weeks of watching him move through life like nothing had changed. Because for him, nothing had. She paid attention more during that time, not in a suspicious way, just carefully, the way she always did, the way she had learned to, and what she noticed wasn't new. It was just clearer now. The way he avoided long-term conversations, the way he redirected anything emotional into something practical, the way he stayed in control of every situation, even the ones that required vulnerability. One night, sitting across from him at dinner, she almost said it. The words were right there. "I'm pregnant." Simple, direct, but something stopped her. Not doubt, not confusion, something deeper. She watched him talk about work, about expansion, about decisions that needed to be made quickly, efficiently, and she realized there was no space in his world for uncertainty, and this was all uncertainty. "You ever think about kids?" she asked instead. It came out casual, like a side question. Harrison didn't hesitate. "Someday." Kiara nodded slowly. "What does that look like for you?" He shrugged slightly. Structured, planned. That word stayed with her. Planned. "Not now, though?" she asked. He shook his head. "No. Timing matters." She looked down at her plate, pushed her food around without really seeing it. "Yeah," she said quietly. "I guess it does." That was the moment something settled in her. Not dramatically, not like a realization she could point to, just clarity. He wasn't ready, and more than that, he wasn't willing to be unready. So, she waited, not for the right time, for the right feeling, for something in him to shift, for something in her to feel safe enough to say it out loud. But safety never came, not fully, because every time things got close to that space, he pulled back, not obviously, not in a way that started arguments, just enough to keep control, just enough to avoid being vulnerable. And Kiara, she adjusted, like she always had. She told herself she was being patient, that he just needed time, that not everyone processed things the same way. But underneath all of that, there was something else, something quieter. She didn't fully trust him with something this real. By the time he asked her to come over that night, the rain already starting to fall outside, Kiara had made a decision she hadn't said out loud yet. She wasn't going to tell him unless something changed, unless he showed her something different, something she hadn't seen before, because this time, it wasn't just about her. She stood outside his building for a second longer than usual, hand resting lightly against her stomach, breathing slower, steadier, like she was preparing for something she couldn't fully name. "I just need to know," she whispered to herself. Not what he would say, but who he actually was when it mattered. Then she walked inside, not knowing. She already had her answer. She just hadn't heard him say it yet. The elevator ride up felt longer than usual. Kiara stood near the back, arms loosely crossed, watching the numbers climb one floor at a time. 14, 15, 16. Her reflection in the metal panel looked calm, too calm. She didn't recognize that version of herself, but she didn't question it either. Sometimes your body settles before your mind does. The doors opened to the quiet hallway. Soft carpet, dim lighting, that same controlled stillness Harrison liked in everything. Nothing out of place, nothing unpredictable. She walked to his door, hesitated for half a second, then knocked. Harrison opened it almost immediately, like he had been standing right there, waiting. That was the first thing that felt off. He usually moved slower than that, measured. Tonight, there was a kind of stillness behind his eyes that didn't feel like control, more like preparation. "Hey," Kiara said. He stepped aside to let her in. "Hey." The apartment looked the same. Floor-to-ceiling windows, the city stretching out behind them. Lights low, a bottle of wine already open on the counter. 2 glasses poured, untouched. Kiara noticed all of it in one glance. "Something going on?" she asked, setting her bag down. Harrison didn't answer right away. He walked past her, back toward the windows, hands sliding into his pockets. That was the second thing. He didn't face her when things mattered. Not immediately. "We need to talk," he said. There it was. Clear, direct, too clean. Kiara felt it in her chest, but her face didn't show it. "Okay." She stayed where she was for a second, then walked over and sat on the edge of the couch. Not relaxed, not tense, just ready. Harrison turned after a moment, took a few steps closer, but didn't sit. He stayed standing. That put her slightly below him. He didn't notice, or maybe he did. "I've been thinking about the future," he said. Kiara nodded slowly. "Me too." That wasn't a lie, not even close. Her hand rested lightly against her thigh, but her fingers curled slightly, grounding herself, waiting. Harrison took a breath, not deep, just enough to mark a shift. "I'm getting married." The words landed clean. No hesitation, no build-up, just placed. Kiara didn't react right away. Her body stayed still, but something inside her dropped. Not sudden, not sharp, more like something she had been holding finally let go. "What?" she said, not loud, just needing to hear it again. To Elise, he said her name like it made everything make sense, like it explained the decision. Kiara blinked once, slow. Elise, of course. She had heard of her. Everyone had. The kind of woman that fit into his world without friction. The kind that didn't require adjustment. "You're serious," Kiara said. "Yes." No pause, no softness, just confirmation. The room went quiet, but not empty, heavy. Kiara looked down for a second, then back up. "Then what was I?" It came out before she could stop it. Not dramatic, not emotional, just honest. Harrison didn't flinch, didn't look away. "You were important to me." Were. Kiara heard it immediately. That one word, past tense, finished. She nodded once. Small, controlled. "Okay." She stood up, not abruptly, just moving, her body catching up to what had already been decided. She picked up her bag slowly, adjusted the strap over her shoulder. Everything about her movement stayed measured, dignified, but she didn't walk out, not yet, because something inside her wasn't done. Not with him, with the truth. "I need to ask you something," she said, turning back toward him. Harrison gave a small nod. "Okay." Kiara held his gaze this time, didn't look away, didn't soften it. If things were different, if timing wasn't. She paused briefly, searching for the right words. "Whatever this is." A breath. Then, "Would you have ever wanted a child with me?" That was the moment, the one that mattered more than anything else that had been said, the one that would tell her everything she needed to know. Harrison didn't answer right away. He studied her, not emotionally, mentally, like he was weighing something, calculating. Kiara felt it, that distance, that separation, like she wasn't part of the answer, just the subject of it. Then he spoke. "You can have a child." He paused, and in that pause, something inside Kiara settled, not broken, not shocked, just clear. but not mine. There it was, no anger, no cruelty in his tone, just certainty, which somehow made it worse. Kiara didn't move, didn't react. Her face stayed composed, but something shifted behind her eyes, not visible to him, but real, because this time, it wasn't life taking something from her. It was someone choosing not to give it. She nodded once, slow, like she understood something fully now. Okay. She turned again, walked toward the door. Her hand reached for the handle, then stopped, because this time, she had something he didn't know. She didn't turn around, didn't look at him, but her voice came out steady, clear. Don't worry. A small pause. The child isn't yours. Silence. Harrison didn't respond, didn't question it, didn't step forward, because, in his mind, that closed the conversation, solved the problem. Kiara opened the door, stepped out into the hallway, closed it behind her, and just like that, it was done. The hallway felt colder than it should have, or maybe that was just her body catching up. Kiara stood there for a second, hand still resting on the door, breathing shallow, controlled. Then she walked, past the elevator, past the quiet carpet, toward the stairwell instead. She didn't want to stand still, didn't want to wait. By the time she pushed through the exit door onto the street, the rain had picked up, not heavy, just steady, cold enough to feel. She stepped onto the sidewalk without opening her umbrella, didn't reach for it, didn't care. Halfway down the block, her steps slowed, then stopped. Her shoulders dropped slightly, just enough, and that's when it hit. Not all at once, not loudly, just a breath that didn't hold steady, a quiet break in something she had been holding too tightly. Her vision blurred slightly as the city lights stretched through the rain. She wiped at her face quickly, not wanting to fully feel it yet. Her hand moved instinctively to her stomach, resting there, protective, grounding. I got you, she whispered, soft, almost lost in the sound of rain and passing cars. We're gonna be okay. Her voice steadied as she said it again, more for herself than anything else, because whatever she had hoped for, whatever version of him she thought might show up tonight, wasn't real. And now she knew, clearly, completely. She took a breath, straightened slightly, then started walking again, not fast, not rushed, just forward. And behind her, in a penthouse filled with quiet and control, a man sat in the same place he had been, thinking he had just made a clean decision, not realizing he had just walked away from something that would never come back to him the same way again. The rain didn't stop that night. It followed her all the way home, not heavy enough to rush through, but steady enough to soak into everything. Her coat, her hair, the quiet she was trying to hold together. Kiara didn't call anyone, not Nia, not her mother, not yet. She unlocked her apartment door in Bayview, stepped inside, and closed it gently behind her like there was something fragile in the room that could break if she moved too fast. The place was quiet, same as she left it. A dish in the sink, her bag on the chair, a faint hum from the refrigerator. Normal. That's what made it harder, because nothing around her had changed, but something inside her had. She didn't turn on the lights right away, just stood there for a second, wet, still, letting the silence settle around her. Then she walked to the couch and sat down slowly, her coat still on. Her hand moved to her stomach again, almost automatically now, not dramatic, just checking, grounding. He made it easy, she said under her breath, not angry, not even sad yet, just stating something that felt clear. She leaned back into the couch, staring up at the ceiling. For a second, her face stayed calm. Then it shifted, small. Her jaw tightened, her eyes blinked a little slower. And then, she exhaled sharply, like something inside her finally gave way. The tears came quietly, not loud, not the kind that take over your whole body, just steady, uninterrupted, like they had been waiting for permission. I really thought, she started, then stopped, because she didn't even want to finish that sentence, didn't want to hear what she had believed out loud. Her phone buzzed on the table. She ignored it. Then it buzzed again. She glanced over. Nia, of course. Kiara stared at the screen for a second before picking it up. Hey, she said, her voice a little rough. "You good?" Nia asked immediately. No small talk, no build-up. Kiara let out a quiet breath. Not really. There was a pause on the other end, not uncomfortable, just giving her space. "You want to come over?" Nia asked. Kiara shook her head, even though Nia couldn't see her. "No, I don't feel like explaining anything yet." "You don't got to explain, just show up." Kiara closed her eyes briefly. She knew that was true. That's why she called Nia. But something in her wanted to sit in this alone for a second longer. "I just need tonight," she said softly. Another pause. "All right," Nia replied, "but don't disappear on me." "I won't, promise?" Kiara hesitated. Then, "Yeah, I promise." After the call ended, Kiara sat there a little longer, letting the quiet come back. But it didn't feel the same anymore. Now, it felt heavier. She stood up eventually, slow, walked to the bathroom, turned on the light. Her reflection looked back at her, eyes slightly red, hair damp, face still trying to hold itself together. Kiara stared for a second, then placed both hands on the counter, leaned forward slightly. "This is what we're doing," she said quietly. Not a question, a decision. The next morning didn't feel like a fresh start. It felt like continuation, like life didn't pause just because something ended. Kiara showed up to work, sat through meetings, answered emails, spoke when she needed to. Nobody would have guessed anything had shifted. That's how she had always been. Hold it together, handle what's in front of you, deal with everything else later. But later came fast. By lunchtime, she found herself sitting alone in her car, parked near the office, hands resting on the steering wheel, not moving. Her phone sat beside her. She picked it up, scrolled for a second, then stopped. Her thumb hovered over one contact. "Mama." She stared at it, then locked the screen again. Not yet. That night, she went to Nia's. Oakland always felt different. Slower, more grounded. Nia opened the door before Kiara even knocked, took one look at her, and stepped aside. "Come in." No questions yet, just space. They sat in the kitchen, takeout containers open, untouched. Same as always when something real was about to be said. Nia leaned back in her chair, watching her. "You gonna tell me what happened?" she said, not as a question. Kiara let out a slow breath. "He's getting married." Nia blinked once. "Okay," to Elise. That got more of a reaction. Nia leaned forward slightly. "Damn." Kiara nodded. "Yeah." Silence settled for a second. Then Nia asked, quieter now, "And you?" Kiara looked down at her hands, then rested one lightly on her stomach. "I'm pregnant." That landed differently. Nia didn't speak right away, didn't react big. She just sat there, processing. Then, "He know?" Kiara shook her head. "No." "You gonna tell him?" Another pause. Longer this time. Kiara's jaw tightened slightly. "I was going to." Nia watched her carefully. What changed? Kiara let out a breath that didn't quite steady. "He did." Nia leaned back again, crossing her arms. "You sure you not just hurt right now?" Kiara didn't answer immediately. She stared at the table, at nothing in particular. "I've been hurt before," she said finally. This didn't feel like that. Nia tilted her head slightly. Then what'd it feel like? Kiara swallowed. "Like I finally saw him." That was enough for Nia. She nodded slowly. "All right." No arguing, no convincing, just acceptance. "So, what you gonna do?" Nia asked. Kiara didn't hesitate this time. "I'm keeping my baby." The words came out steady, clear, certain. Nia studied her for a second, then nodded again. "Then we figure everything else out after that." That night, Kiara didn't cry, not like before. Something had shifted, not healed, not resolved, but settled. She lay on Nia's couch, staring at the ceiling, one hand resting over her stomach again. Same position, different feeling. "I don't know what this gonna look like," she whispered, not scared, just honest. Her fingers pressed lightly against her shirt. "Small, protective, but I know what it's not," she added quietly. And for the first time since leaving Harrison's apartment, that felt like enough to hold on to, because even though nothing about this was easy, it was hers. And this time, She wasn't waiting for anyone else to decide what that meant. Harrison didn't think about Kiara the next morning, not consciously. He woke up at the same time, showered, checked his phone before getting dressed. Emails, messages, updates, stacked the way they always did, waiting for him to move things forward. That was familiar. That was manageable. So he moved. The meeting started at 9 a.m. Sharper. Conference room, glass walls. City stretched out behind him like a reminder of everything he was building. He stood at the head of the table, walking through projections, timelines, next steps. Confident, clear, controlled, the way people expected him to be, the way he expected himself to be. Any concerns? He asked toward the end. A few people shook their heads. One of them started to speak, hesitated, then stopped. Harrison noticed, but didn't press. He didn't have time to unpack uncertainty. Not today. By noon, he was across town at lunch. Elise was already seated when he arrived. Of course she was. She didn't do late, didn't do unprepared, didn't do anything halfway. Harrison, she said, standing just slightly as he approached. Not for him, for the room, for the way it looked. He nodded. Elise. They sat, ordered quickly. Efficiency without needing to discuss it. You've been hard to reach, she said, folding her hands neatly on the table. I've been busy. That's not new. Harrison gave a small, controlled smile. What do you need? No back and forth. No emotional reading. Just direct. Elise leaned in slightly. I think we should move forward. With what? Our timeline. Harrison didn't respond immediately. He reached for his glass instead, taking a slow sip before setting it back down. Explain. She laid it out clearly. The advantages, the positioning, the optics. Everything made sense. It always did with her. That was the thing. Nothing she said ever sounded wrong. It just didn't always feel right. But feeling wasn't something Harrison relied on, not when logic was clean, not when outcomes were predictable. It's the right move, Elise finished. Harrison nodded slowly. I agree. No hesitation, no visible doubt. Because doubt didn't belong in decisions like this. The engagement wasn't a surprise. Not really. It was discussed, aligned, timed. Everything about it fit. On paper, the announcement came 2 weeks later. Clean, strategic, well received, exactly as expected. Harrison stood beside Elise at the small gathering that followed. Investors, partners, people who mattered in ways that translated to growth. You make a strong pair, someone said. He nodded politely. Elise smiled in that controlled way she had. Perfect, but never too much. Thank you, she replied. Harrison didn't add anything. Didn't need to. The image spoke for itself. That night, back at his place, things were quiet again. But not the same kind of quiet as before. This one felt settled, organized, like everything was moving in the direction it was supposed to. Elise walked through the apartment like she already belonged there, not exploring, not adjusting, just fitting in. You should update your calendar, she said, setting her bag down. We'll need to coordinate schedules more carefully. Harrison nodded. I will. She moved toward the kitchen, glancing at the open space like she was already rearranging it in her mind. We should host something soon, she added. Keep momentum. After the next quarter, he said. Before, she replied. A small pause. Then she looked at him. We don't wait for momentum. We create it. That was the difference between them. Harrison built, carefully, step by step. Elise pushed. Forward, faster, always faster. For a while, it worked. The company grew. Quickly, new partnerships, new markets, everything expanding outward, and Harrison moved with it. Adjusted, adapted, delivered. That's what he did. But there were moments, small ones, where something didn't sit right. Not enough to stop anything, just enough to notice. Like the Singapore deal. Elise had pushed hard for it. High return, she said. Strategic positioning. Harrison reviewed it, ran the numbers, looked at the risk. There are gaps, he said. There's opportunity, she corrected. He leaned back in his chair, studied the screen again. What's missing? Nothing that matters long term. That answer stayed with him. Long term. He signed off anyway. Because the growth made sense. Because the trajectory held. Because pulling back didn't align with where things were going. That's how it started. Not with a mistake. With a decision that made sense in the moment. Weeks passed, then months, and the cracks didn't show immediately. They never do. At home, things stayed smooth. Too smooth. No friction, no tension, but also no depth. Conversations with Elise stayed focused, productive, efficient. What's next? What needs to be done? How do we position this? They didn't ask each other questions that didn't have answers, didn't sit in silence unless it served a purpose, didn't linger in moments that didn't move things forward. One night, Harrison stood by the window, looking out over the city. Same view, same space, different feeling. Elise walked up beside him. Thinking? She asked. He nodded slightly. About what? He didn't answer right away. Then, timing. She tilted her head slightly. You're doing that thing again. What thing? Overthinking. He exhaled lightly. I'm evaluating. She smiled faintly. That's just a slower version of the same thing. He didn't respond, because part of him knew she wasn't entirely wrong. Elise stepped away after a moment, back to her phone, back to whatever she was already managing. Harrison stayed where he was, looking out, but not really seeing anything. Something felt off, not wrong, not broken, just missing. He couldn't name it, didn't try to, because naming it would mean slowing down, and slowing down didn't fit into anything he had built, so he let it pass, like everything else that didn't immediately serve a purpose. But the feeling didn't disappear, it just moved, quieter, deeper, waiting. And Harrison, he kept moving forward, because that's what he had always done, not realizing some things don't catch up right away. They wait until there's nowhere left to go. Kiara didn't notice the shift in her life the moment it happened. It didn't come with a clear decision or some dramatic turning point. It showed up in smaller ways, like the night she stayed up past midnight, not because she had to, but because she couldn't sleep, and ended up reworking a client's financial plan for the third time. She sat at her kitchen table, laptop open, one leg tucked under her, a glass of water she hadn't touched in over an hour sitting to her right. Her apartment was quiet, too quiet some nights, but she was getting used to that. She stared at the spreadsheet on her screen, numbers lined up clean, predictable. Unlike everything else in her life, she adjusted one column, then another, then stopped. Leaning back slightly, she looked at the numbers again, then reached for her own account tab, paused, scrolled. Her expression shifted just a little. That don't make no sense, she muttered. She was helping clients restructure investments, build long-term strategies, fix mistakes they didn't even realize they were making. But her own situation, it wasn't bad. It just wasn't intentional. Kiara closed her laptop halfway, then opened it again. Something about that moment didn't let her walk away. The next day, she mentioned it to Nia. They were sitting in Nia's kitchen again, morning light cutting through the window, coffee sitting between them. You ever notice how we be solving everybody else's problems, but ours just sitting there? Kiara said. Nia raised an eyebrow. Speak for yourself, she said, but there was a smile behind it. Kiara shook her head slightly. I'm serious. I'm building other people's money like it's mine, but I'm not building mine the same way. Nia took a sip of her coffee. So fix it. Just like that. Kiara stared at her. That's simple, huh? It's not simple, Nia said, setting the cup down. It's just clear. That word again. Clear. Kiara nodded slowly, because deep down, she already knew. She didn't quit her job, didn't make any big, reckless moves. She wasn't built like that. She started small, late nights, weekends, one client, then another, women she knew first, friends of friends, people who trusted her because she spoke to them like they actually lived in the real world, not like numbers were separate from everything else. Break it down for me like I'm not in finance, one client said over the phone. Kiara smiled. Because you're not, she replied. And that's the point. That's where it clicked. Not just what she was doing, but who she was doing it for. Women who worked jobs and still felt behind. Women who had responsibilities that didn't pause just because they were trying to build wealth. Women who didn't need theory, they needed something that fit their lives. Kiara understood that because she was one of them. Meanwhile, Harrison's world kept expanding. The company moved faster. Meetings stacked tighter. Decisions came quicker. There was less room for hesitation now, less patience for anything that didn't move at the same speed. Elise thrived in that space. She moved like she had already seen 3 steps ahead, always pushing, always pressing. "This is where people get comfortable," she said one night, reviewing projections. "And comfortable is where they get left behind." Harrison leaned back slightly. "We're not comfortable." "Then stop acting like it." That tone, it wasn't confrontational. It wasn't emotional. It was competitive. Harrison noticed it, didn't address it, just adjusted, like he always did, because, in his mind, pressure meant growth. But something underneath that pressure started to shift, not visibly, not immediately, just slightly off. Back in Bayview, Kiara's body was changing. Slowly, noticeably, her clothes fit differently. Her energy moved in waves. Some days she handled everything. Other days, everything felt heavier than it should. One night, she sat on the edge of her bed, her phone in her hand, staring at nothing in particular. Her eyes were tired, her shoulders slightly slumped. "I don't know if I'm doing this right," she said quietly, not to anyone, just out loud. Her hand rested over her stomach, stayed there. Then her phone buzzed. Her mother. Kiara hesitated, then answered. "Hey, Mama, baby, you all right?" That question always landed differently, because her mother didn't ask it lightly. Kiara let out a small breath. "I'm okay." A pause. Then, "I'm pregnant." Silence on the other end. Not shock, not disappointment, just wait. "Well," her mother said finally, voice softer now, "you gon' have to be stronger than you ever been." Kiara nodded, even though she couldn't see her. "I know. You doing this by yourself?" Another pause, longer this time. "I was already doing life by myself," Kiara said quietly. "I just didn't realize it." Her mother didn't argue, didn't question it. "Then you come home Sunday," she said. "We gon' eat, talk, figure things out." That was enough. Across the city, Harrison sat in a conference room staring at a report that didn't sit right. Numbers didn't match projections. Not dramatically, just enough. "This isn't what we discussed," he said, tapping the page lightly. Elise didn't flinch. "It's what the opportunity required. That's not how this works." She leaned back slightly. "That's exactly how it works when you want to win." That word again. Win. Harrison looked at her, really looked this time, and for a brief moment, something in him paused, because this didn't feel like building anymore. But he didn't stop it. Not yet. Back in her apartment, Kiara sat at her kitchen table again. Same spot, different weight. Her laptop open, a notebook beside it. Numbers, plans, ideas. Her hand rested on her stomach as she worked, not thinking about the past, not thinking about Harrison, just forward. But sometimes, late at night, when everything slowed down just enough, she thought about that night. Not emotionally, not painfully, just clearly, and every time, the same thing settled in her chest. He didn't choose you, and instead of breaking her, that truth started doing something else. It started shaping her. Across the same city, Harrison was building something bigger than he had before, but for the first time, it wasn't steady. And Kiara, she was building something smaller, quieter, but it held. And neither of them knew yet which one was actually going to last. The first real problem didn't feel like a collapse. It felt like a delay. Harrison was sitting in his office, the glass walls reflecting a version of stability that still looked intact from the outside. Laptop open, reports stacked, phone buzzing every few minutes. Normal, that's what made it easy to ignore. "This just needs adjustment," he said, scanning the numbers again. Across from him, Elise didn't respond immediately. She leaned back slightly, arms folded, not defensive, just observing. "It's not a delay," she said after a moment. "It's a signal." Harrison didn't look up. "It's a fluctuation. It's exposure." That word made him pause. Just for a second. Then he kept reading. The Singapore deal. It had started slipping in small ways. Projected returns not aligning. Partners hesitating. Emails taking longer to get responses. Nothing dramatic. Just off. "We knew there was risk," Harrison said. Elise nodded. "We knew there was opportunity. That doesn't mean we ignore the gaps." She tilted her head slightly. "It means we move faster than them." That was always her answer. Push forward. Outpace the problem. Don't slow down long enough for anything to catch up. For a while, Harrison agreed with that, because it worked, until it didn't. 2 weeks later, the tone shifted. He was in a conference call when it happened. 3 screens open, voices overlapping slightly, everyone trying to stay composed. "There are inconsistencies," one of the partners said. Harrison leaned forward slightly. "What kind of inconsistencies?" A pause. "Not a technical one, a human one. Reported figures don't match what's being verified on our end." Harrison's jaw tightened. "Send me the breakdown." "We already did." He checked his inbox, scrolled, found it, opened it. The numbers didn't just feel off now. They were off. Clearly, Harrison didn't speak for a second, didn't rush to respond. That wasn't his style. "We'll review and get back to you," he said finally. Controlled, measured. The call ended. The room stayed quiet. He looked up. Elise was already watching him. "This is what I meant," she said. Harrison closed the laptop slowly. "You signed off on this. So did you." That landed. "I asked about the gaps," he said, "and I told you they weren't long-term issues. This doesn't look short-term." Elise didn't flinch. "It looks manageable." Harrison stood up, walked toward the window, hands in his pockets again. Same position. Different feeling. "Manageable isn't the same as stable," he said. Elise stood too, moved closer, but not next to him. Still positioned, still deliberate. "You're thinking too small," she said. That phrase again. Harrison turned slightly. "Or, you're thinking too fast." A beat, not loud, but something shifted. Elise's expression didn't change much, but something behind it did. Less alignment, more distance. "We don't get where we are by playing safe," she said, "and we don't stay there by ignoring risk." That was the first real disagreement. Not about numbers, not about strategy, about direction, and it didn't resolve. It just sat there. Over the next month, things didn't stabilize. They spread. Another deal flagged. Then another. Internal reports started coming in. Not urgent, but consistent. Harrison found himself in more rooms, but not the same kind. "Walk me through this again. Who approved this? Why wasn't this flagged earlier?" The tone had changed. Not aggressive, but no longer deferential. He answered what he could, deflected what he couldn't yet confirm, bought time. But time didn't fix it. One morning, his assistant stepped into his office, hesitating slightly. "There's something you should see." Harrison looked up. "What is it?" She handed him a tablet. An article, online, already circulating. Headline, clean, sharp, too specific to be speculation. "Financial inconsistencies, aggressive expansion, questionable partnerships." Harrison read through it once, then again, slower. They weren't guessing. They had information. He set the tablet down carefully, too carefully. "How long has this been out?" he asked. "A few hours." A few hours was enough. His phone buzzed, then again, then again. Calls, messages, requests. Not congratulations anymore. Questions. Harrison didn't answer right away. He sat there, still, because this was different. This wasn't something he could contain internally. It was already outside, moving, growing. He stood up slowly, walked out of his office, down the hallway, into the conference room. Elise was already there, standing at the table, phone in her hand. "You've seen it," she said. Not a question. Harrison nodded once. "What's the plan?" he asked. Elise didn't answer immediately. She looked at him, longer than usual. Then, she set her phone down. We distance, she said. Harrison frowned slightly. From what? She met his eyes directly. From anything that ties back too clearly. That didn't sit right. Not just strategically. Something deeper. You're part of those decisions, he said. A pause. Elise picked up her phone again. Not in a way that's documented, she replied. That was the moment. Not loud, not explosive, but clear. Harrison felt something drop. Not shock, not even anger. Just realization. You knew, he said quietly. Elise didn't respond. Not directly. I knew what we needed to win, she said instead. There it was again. Win. At any cost. Harrison stepped back slightly. Not physically far, but enough, because for the first time, he wasn't looking at her as a partner. He was seeing the difference. And it wasn't small. It was fundamental. By the end of the week, Elise was gone. No announcement. No conversation. No explanation. Her things cleared. Her presence removed. Clean. Too clean. Harrison stood in the apartment that night. Lights off. City still moving outside. Same space. Same silence. But this time, it wasn't controlled. It was empty. His phone sat on the counter, buzzing occasionally, then stopping, then starting again. He didn't touch it, because for the first time in years, there was nothing he could say that would fix what was happening. No angle, no leverage, no strategy, just consequences. He walked to the window, stood there, looking out, but not really seeing anything. And slowly, something else started rising. Not about the company, not about Elise, something older, quieter. Kiara, not as a memory, not as regret, as contrast. The way she used to look at him, not impressed, not calculating, just present. He closed his eyes briefly. You can have a child, but not mine. The words came back, clearer now, heavier, because for the first time, he wasn't distracted enough to avoid them. And this time, they didn't feel like something he said. They felt like something he did. And the consequences of that weren't sitting in a report or a headline. They were out there, living, growing. Without him, the nights didn't get easier. They just got different. Kiara learned that somewhere between the third week of barely sleeping and the first time Amari cried in a way she couldn't immediately fix, it wasn't panic anymore. It was endurance. Her apartment in Bayview felt smaller now, not in a bad way, just fuller. A crib near the window, soft blankets folded in a way she tried to keep neat, but never stayed that way for long. A bottle on the counter she forgot to wash until the next morning. Little things. Constant things. Okay. I got you, she murmured, pacing slowly across the living room. Amari was restless, not screaming, just unsettled. That kind of quiet discomfort that was harder to figure out. Kiara adjusted her hold slightly, checked the blanket, checked again. You not hungry. You not wet. So what is it? She exhaled softly, not frustrated, just tired. There were moments like that, where she felt like she was missing something obvious, something every other mother probably just knew. She sat down slowly on the couch, pulling Amari closer, rocking gently. The movement was instinct now, something her body learned before her mind did. It's okay, she whispered again, even though she wasn't sure who she was calming. Eventually, Amari settled, not fully asleep, but enough. Kiara leaned back, eyes closing for just a second longer than she meant to. Her body wanted to stay there, to rest, but her mind didn't, because sitting still meant thinking, and thinking, that's where everything came back. Not Harrison, not like before, just the reality of everything, the responsibility, the weight of doing this without a backup plan. She opened her eyes again, looked down. Amari's face relaxed now, calm. Kiara studied it for a second, that quiet stillness again, the same one she noticed even before. You don't ask for much, huh? She said softly. A small smile touched her lips. Then her eyes shifted toward the table. Her laptop sat there, closed, waiting. That part of her life didn't pause. It couldn't. Later that night, after finally getting Amari down, Kiara sat at the table again. Same spot, different version of her. She opened her laptop slowly, scrolled through messages, clients, requests, questions. She answered one, then another, then stopped. Her hand hovered over the keyboard, her eyes tired, her shoulders heavy. This gotta make sense, she muttered, because now it wasn't just about her. She pulled up her notes, adjusted a plan she had been working on, simplified it, removed anything that didn't feel necessary. Women didn't need more complexity. They needed clarity. They needed something that fit into real life, not some perfect version of it. Kiara understood that more now than ever. A few weeks later, she met with a client in a small cafe near downtown. Nothing fancy, just quiet enough to talk. "I feel like I'm always behind," the woman said, stirring her coffee without drinking it. "I make money, but it disappears." Kiara nodded. "Where does it go?" The woman hesitated. "Bills, helping family, random stuff I don't even track." Kiara leaned forward slightly. "Okay, so we're not starting with investments." The woman looked up. "We're not?" "No," Kiara said. "We're starting with control." That word landed, different from how Harrison used it. This wasn't about dominance or prediction. This was about understanding. By the end of the meeting, the woman looked lighter, not because everything was fixed, but because it made sense now. "You make it feel doable," she said. Kiara gave a small smile. "It is." That's how it started growing. Not fast, not loud, just real. Referrals came in, then more. Late nights became routine. Balancing work and motherhood didn't feel balanced. It felt like constant adjustment. Some days she got it right. Other days, she didn't. There were mornings she overslept, appointments she had to reschedule, moments where she sat on the floor, back against the couch, Amari asleep on her chest, wondering if she was doing any of it well. "I don't know if I'm enough for all of this," she said once, quietly. Nia was sitting across from her, watching. "You not supposed to be enough for everything at once," Nia said. Kiara looked up. "What does that even mean?" "It means you stop trying to be perfect at everything," Nia replied. "You just be consistent at what matters." Kiara exhaled. That didn't fix anything, but it helped. A few months later, everything shifted again. Mrs. Langford had been one of her quieter clients. Older, careful, not emotional, but consistent. "You explain things in a way that makes me feel less late," she said once. Kiara smiled slightly. "You're not late." "No, I am, but at least now I understand where I am." They met a few times after that. Simple conversations, nothing dramatic. Then, one day, the calls stopped. Kiara didn't think much of it at first. People got busy, life happened, until she got the call. Mrs. Langford had passed. It hit her harder than she expected, not because they were close in the traditional sense, but because of what that relationship represented. Trust. A few weeks later, a letter arrived. Kiara opened it at her kitchen table. Amari, asleep in the other room. Inside, a note, and something else. She read the note first. "You reminded me of who I used to be, before I let fear make my decisions. Don't make that mistake. Build boldly." Kiara sat there for a long time after reading it, the words settling in slowly. Then she looked at the rest. The inheritance, not overwhelming, not life-changing in the way people imagine, but enough to shift something, enough to remove a certain kind of pressure. Kiara leaned back in her chair, eyes still on the letter. "Build boldly," she repeated quietly. That word again. Clear, but this time, it felt different, because now, she wasn't building from survival. She was building from choice. And that changed everything. Harrison didn't go back to work the next day, not in the way he used to. He still showed up, still sat in meetings, still answered what needed answering. But something in him had shifted, subtle, hard to explain. He wasn't leading the same way. "Walk me through your thinking," one of the board members said during a meeting. Harrison paused, looked at the report in front of him, then back up. "We moved too fast," he said. That wasn't a normal answer, not from him. The room went quiet for a second. Too fast. "How?" someone asked. Harrison leaned back slightly, not defensive, just considering We prioritized expansion over stability, he said, and we ignored signals that didn't fit the outcome we wanted. That was the cleanest version of it. Still controlled, still structured, but different, because he wasn't redirecting it. He was owning it. After the meeting, he sat alone in his office, door closed, phone silent. The city outside still looked the same, but it didn't feel like something he was building anymore. It felt like something he had already lost control of. He picked up his phone, scrolled through contacts, paused. Kiara. He didn't press it, didn't even open the message thread, just looked at the name, then locked the screen. Too soon, or maybe too late. He set the phone down and leaned back in his chair, closed his eyes for a second, and for the first time in a long time, his mind didn't go to work. It went to her, not the version of her he remembered when things were easy, not the moments that made him feel good, the real ones, the way she would pause before answering something serious, the way she noticed when he avoided things, the way she didn't fill silence just to make it comfortable. You answer without saying anything real. He exhaled slowly. She had seen him, not the version he showed everyone else, the one underneath, and he had still chosen control over that. Harrison opened his eyes again, looked around the office, everything in place, everything structured, everything empty. Across the city, Kiara stood in a small office space she had just started renting. Nothing big, a desk, 2 chairs, a window that didn't show much, but let in enough light. She stood in the middle of it for a second, hands on her hips, looking around. "This is ours now," she said quietly. Amari sat in a small playchair nearby, focused on something that only made sense to them. Kiara smiled slightly, not big, not dramatic, just real. She moved to the desk, setting her bag down, opened her laptop, started organizing. Same rhythm, same focus, but this time, there was space, not just physically, mentally, emotionally. She wasn't building around something missing anymore. She was building from something solid. Later that afternoon, she took Amari for a walk. Downtown, streets busy, people moving fast. She moved differently, not rushed, not reactive, present. She paused at a crosswalk, adjusting the stroller slightly. Amari looked up at her. Calm. "You doing all right?" she asked softly. No response, just that same quiet attention. Kiara smiled, because she understood that now. Not everything needed to be loud to be real. Back across the city, Harrison sat at home, lights off, phone still untouched. The silence wasn't peaceful, but it wasn't something he avoided anymore either. He sat with it, and in that silence, more things came up. Not just Kiara, moments, conversations he had ended too early, questions he had redirected, feelings he had labeled as distractions instead of paying attention to them. "I don't think that far ahead," that's what he told her. And now, he was sitting in a future he hadn't thought about, alone, not because no one was there, because he hadn't made space for anyone to stay. He stood up slowly, walked to the kitchen, poured a glass of water. Didn't drink it, just held it. His reflection in the dark window looked different now, not because anything physical had changed, because he could see it. The pattern, control, distance, avoidance, not in a dramatic way, just consistently, and that consistency had led him here. He set the glass down, let out a slow breath. "I didn't lose her," he said quietly. The word sat there for a second, then he corrected himself. "I let her go." That felt closer. Across the city, Kiara sat at her desk later that night, Amari asleep in the other room, her laptop open, numbers lined up, plans forming. She paused for a second, looked toward the hallway, listened. Nothing, just quiet. She leaned back in her chair, closed her eyes briefly, and for a moment, the past came back. Not heavy, not painful, just there, that night. The rain, his voice, but not mine. Kiara opened her eyes again, looked back at the screen. "Okay," she said quietly, not to him, to herself, because that moment, it didn't define her anymore. It shaped her, and there was a difference. Back in his apartment, Harrison picked up his phone again. This time, He didn't just look at her name. He opened the message thread, scrolled, nothing recent, no unfinished conversations. Just space. His thumb hovered over the screen. He didn't type anything, not yet. But for the first time, he wasn't avoiding it. He was sitting with the possibility of reaching out, not to fix anything, not to go back, but because now he understood what he had walked away from, and that understanding didn't feel clean. It felt late and heavier than anything he had lost in business, because this time, the loss wasn't measured in numbers. It was measured in something he couldn't rebuild the same way, and he knew it. Harrison didn't send the message that night. He stared at the screen long enough for the words to stop forming. Every sentence felt wrong before it was even finished. Too polished, too controlled, too much like the way he used to talk when he was trying to manage outcomes instead of tell the truth. So he deleted everything, locked his phone, set it down. The next morning didn't fix that. If anything, it made it clearer. He sat at his kitchen counter, a cup of coffee going cold in front of him, a notebook open he hadn't used in years. Not for work, not for anything that didn't have structure. He picked up a pen, held it there for a second, then set it down again. "This isn't something you schedule," he muttered, because that's what he kept trying to do. Fit this into something efficient, something clean. But nothing about this was clean. He picked the pen back up, started writing. Not fast, not smooth. The first few lines didn't come out right. He crossed them out, started again. He didn't try to make it sound good, didn't try to make it sound like him. He just wrote, "Kiara, I don't know if I have the right to reach out to you like this. I've been sitting with that for a while, and I still don't have a clear answer, but I'm writing anyway." He paused, looked at what he wrote. It didn't feel strong, but it felt honest, so he kept going. "I've spent a long time thinking about what I would say if I ever saw you again. I thought it would be something clear, something that made sense. But the truth is, I don't think anything I say now can make sense of what I did back then." He stopped again. The pen hovered. That word, did. It sat heavier than he expected. He leaned back slightly, exhaled, then continued. "I didn't understand what I had when I was with you, not in the way that mattered. I thought I did. I thought being consistent, being present in the ways I understood, was enough. It wasn't." Harrison's hand slowed, because now he wasn't writing something he had already processed. He was figuring it out as he went. "You asked me a question that night, and I answered it like it was a decision instead of something real. I see that now." He paused longer this time. His grip on the pen tightened slightly, because that was the part that stayed, not just what he said, how he said it. Flat, certain. He looked down at the page again, then kept writing. "I've been thinking about that moment more than I should probably admit, not because I want to change it. I know I can't, but because I finally understand what it actually meant." He stopped, tapped the pen lightly against the paper, once, twice, then added, "It wasn't just something I said. It was something I chose." That line stayed. He didn't cross it out, didn't adjust it, because it felt right. He leaned forward again. "I'm not writing to ask you for anything. I'm not expecting a response. I don't think I've earned that. I just needed to say this somewhere that wasn't in my head." Another pause. His eyes shifted slightly, toward the living room, empty, quiet, then back to the page. "I saw you the other day, and I saw what your life looks like now. Not all of it, but enough." He hesitated. "Then, you built something real. I can see that, and I wasn't part of it." The words didn't feel dramatic. They felt accurate. "I don't know what being part of that looks like now, or if it's even something you would consider. I understand if it's not." His hand slowed again, because this was where the old version of him would try to steer things, frame it differently, create an opening. He didn't. "I'm sorry." He stared at that line. Simple, too simple. But anything more felt like explanation, and explanation felt like defense. So he left it, then added one more line, not for how things turned out, for how I handled them. That felt closer. He sat there for a while after that, reading over what he had written, not editing, just sitting with it. It didn't fix anything, didn't change anything, but it felt real. That was enough. Later that afternoon, he folded the letter, placed it in an envelope, wrote her name on the front. No hesitation this time. At the post office, he stood in line longer than he needed to, not because it was crowded, because he wasn't used to doing things that didn't have immediate feedback. When it was his turn, he slid the envelope across the counter. The woman behind it didn't look up much. "Regular mail?" she asked. "Yeah," he said. She stamped it, set it aside. That was it. No confirmation, no guarantee, just sent. Harrison stepped outside. The air felt cooler than he expected. He stood there for a second, hands in his pockets, and for the first time since seeing Kiara again, he wasn't thinking about what came next, because for once, he hadn't tried to control it. Across the city, Kiara checked her mailbox without expecting anything. Bills, flyers, something addressed in handwriting she didn't recognize at first. She paused, looked at it again, her name. She stood there for a second longer than usual, not opening it yet, not reacting, just holding it, because something about it already felt familiar. Even before she read a single word, she closed the mailbox slowly, turned, walked back toward her apartment, the envelope still in her hand, and for the first time in a while, something from her past wasn't just a memory. It was back, waiting to be opened. Kiara didn't open the letter right away. She set it on the kitchen table, next to her keys, next to a half-finished cup of tea she forgot about earlier. Amari was in the living room, quietly stacking blocks in a way that didn't quite make sense but somehow held together anyway. Kiara stood there for a second, looking at the envelope like it might say something before she touched it. It didn't. She picked it up, turned it over once, then set it back down again. "Not right now," she murmured, because she already knew. Whatever was inside it wasn't small. That night, after dinner, after bath time, after finally getting Amari to sleep, Kiara came back to the table. The apartment was quiet, the kind of quiet that didn't feel empty anymore. She sat down slowly, pulled the envelope closer, opened it carefully. The paper inside was folded clean. No rush in it, no urgency. She started reading. Her face didn't change much at first, just small shifts, a slight tightening around her eyes, a pause here and there where she went back a line. She didn't rush it, didn't skim. By the time she got to the end, she sat there for a while, letter still in her hand. No tears, no anger, just stillness. She placed the paper flat on the table, smoothed it once, then leaned back in her chair. "You waited this long to understand," she said quietly. It wasn't bitter, just observed. Her eyes moved toward the hallway, listened. Amari shifted slightly in sleep, then settled again. Kiara looked back at the letter. "I already did all this without you," she added under her breath. And that was the part that stayed, not what he said, but when he said it. Still, she didn't throw it away, didn't fold it back up immediately. She left it there. The next morning, she called Nia. "He wrote me," Kiara said, standing by the window, looking out at nothing in particular. Nia didn't react loudly. "Okay," she said, and Kiara hesitated. It wasn't bad. Nia let out a quiet breath. "That's not an answer." Kiara leaned her forehead lightly against the glass. It was honest. That landed differently. Nia was quiet for a second. "Honest how?" Kiara looked down at the letter sitting on the table. "He didn't try to fix anything," she said. "Didn't ask for anything." Another pause. "So what you gonna do?" Nia asked. Kiara didn't answer right away, because that was the part she hadn't figured out yet. "I don't know," she said finally. "That afternoon, she sent a message. Short, simple. We can talk. Not for long." She stared at it for a second before hitting send. No overthinking, no editing. Just decision. The cafe in the Mission District wasn't quiet. Not completely. But it had enough space between tables that conversations didn't overlap too much. Kiara got there early, chose a table near the window, sat facing the door. Her phone sat on the table, screen down. She didn't check it, didn't distract herself. She just waited. When Harrison walked in, he saw her immediately, not because she stood out, but because she didn't move. Same stillness, Same presence. He walked over, slower than he usually would. "Hey," he said. Kiara nodded slightly. "Hi." He sat across from her, not too close, not too far. There was a pause, not awkward, just real. "I got your letter," she said. Harrison nodded. "I read it." Another pause. "I meant it," he added. Kiara looked at him, studied him for a second. "I know," she said. That caught him off guard, just slightly. "You do?" he asked. She nodded. "You sound different." Harrison exhaled lightly. "I had to be." Kiara didn't respond to that, not immediately. She picked up her cup, took a small sip, set it back down. "You didn't have to be," she said. Harrison frowned slightly. "You chose to be," she added. That landed. Not harsh, but clear. He nodded. "Yeah." Silence again. Not empty. Just space. Harrison leaned forward slightly, hands resting on the table. "I've been thinking about a lot of things," he said. Kiara didn't interrupt. "Not just what happened," he continued, "but how I handled it." She held his gaze. "You handled it like it didn't matter," she said. He didn't argue, didn't correct her. "I know." That was it. No explanation, no defense. Kiara looked down for a second, then back up. "You always knew how to say the right thing," she said quietly. Harrison shifted slightly. "That's not what I'm doing now." "I know," she said again. That word again. Not dismissive, not forgiving, just acknowledging. He leaned back slightly, exhaled. "I'm not here to change anything that already happened," he said. Kiara nodded. "Good," she replied, "because that wasn't possible." And they both knew it. A moment passed, then another. The noise of the cafe filled the gaps. People ordering, chairs moving, life continuing around them. But at their table, everything stayed focused. Harrison looked at her, really looked this time. "You're doing well," he said. Kiara didn't smile, but she didn't deflect it either. "I am," she said. Simple. No performance, no need to prove it. Harrison nodded slowly. "I can see that," and for the first time, that didn't feel like something he was observing from a distance. It felt like something he had nothing to do with. And that realization didn't come with jealousy. It came with something quieter, acceptance, but not peace, not yet, because there was still something sitting between them, unsaid, and both of them knew it wasn't going to stay that way much longer. The question didn't come out right away. It sat there, between them, unspoken, but present enough that neither of them pretended it wasn't. Harrison looked down at his hands for a second. Then, back at her. "I want to be part of Amari's life." He didn't ease into it, didn't soften it, because there wasn't a softer version of that sentence. Kiara didn't react immediately. Her face stayed still, but her fingers shifted slightly against the side of her cup. Small movement, but it said enough. Harrison leaned forward a little more, not pushing, just steady. "I'm not asking to step in like nothing happened," he said. "I know that's not realistic." Kiara's eyes stayed on him. "I missed everything," he added, quieter now. "And that's on me." She blinked once. Slow. "I'm not trying to take anything from you," he continued. I want a chance to show up the right way." That was the closest he had come to uncertainty in front of her. And it showed, not in his voice, in what he didn't say. Kiara leaned back slightly in her chair. Not defensive, just creating space. "You know what hurts the most?" she asked. Harrison didn't answer. He didn't try to guess. He just waited. "Not that you left," she said. A pause, but that I stayed longer than I should have, thinking you'd choose me. Harrison's gaze dropped. Not dramatically, just naturally. "I would have given you everything," she added. That one landed deeper. "Because he believed her. Now, and you told me I wasn't even worth a child." The words didn't rise, didn't sharpen. They settled. Harrison nodded once. Slow. "I know." There was nothing else to say to that. No version of explanation that didn't sound like avoidance. Kiara looked at him for a second longer, then shifted her gaze toward the window. "I spent a long time thinking I lost something when you walked away," she said. Harrison stayed still. "But I didn't." She turned back to him. "I lost an illusion." That word stayed, because it wasn't angry. It wasn't emotional. It was final. Harrison let out a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. "I'm not that person anymore," he said. Kiara didn't respond right away. That silence mattered, because she wasn't rejecting what he said. She just wasn't accepting it either. "Maybe you're not," she said after a moment. Another pause. "But that doesn't change who you were when it mattered." That closed something, not harshly, but completely. Harrison nodded again. "I'm not asking you to forget that," he said. Kiara tilted her head slightly. "Then what are you asking?" There it was. Clear, direct. Harrison hesitated. Not long, but enough to show he wasn't rehearsed. "I'm asking for a chance to be present now," he said. Kiara's expression didn't change. "For Amari," he added. She looked at him, really looked. Not the version of him she used to try to understand. The one sitting in front of her now. There was something different. That part was true. But it didn't erase anything. It didn't undo anything. Kiara's hand rested on the table, still, grounded. "I didn't raise Amari with absence," she said calmly. The words weren't sharp, but they didn't bend either. A pause. "I'm not introducing it now." Harrison felt that, not like a rejection, like a consequence. He nodded slowly. "I understand." And this time, he did. Not just the words, the meaning behind them. Because showing up now didn't mean anything automatically. Not after not showing up before. Kiara picked up her cup again, took a small sip, set it down. There was no tension in her body, no anger in her face, just clarity. Harrison sat back, not defeated, not broken, just aware. "I would have done things differently," he said quietly. Kiara didn't respond to that, because that version of him didn't exist when it mattered. The silence stretched, but it didn't feel uncomfortable. It felt complete. Kiara stood up first, not abruptly, not emotionally, just finished. She picked up her bag, slipped the strap over her shoulder. Harrison stayed seated for a second, then stood too, not to stop her, just because it felt wrong to remain sitting. She looked at him one last time, not searching, not hoping, just acknowledging. "You can still be a better man," she said. A small pause. "Just not for me." Harrison nodded. That landed exactly where it needed to. No resistance, no argument, because for the first time, he wasn't trying to change the outcome. Kiara turned, walked toward the door, didn't rush, didn't look back, just left. Harrison stood there for a moment after she was gone. The noise of the cafe came back slowly, chairs moving, voices overlapping, life continuing, but none of it pulled him out of where he was standing, because something had settled, not closure, something more honest than that, understanding. He sat back down, hands resting on the table, eyes unfocused for a second. He didn't reach for his phone, didn't try to distract himself. He just sat there, because now there was nothing left to negotiate. No version of this where he got what he wanted. No version where showing up late balanced out not being there early. Just truth, and the truth didn't feel dramatic. It felt quiet, permanent, outside. Kiara walked down the street, the afternoon light softer now, the city moving like it always did. She didn't slow down, didn't stop, but something in her chest shifted. Small, not regret, not doubt, just recognition of what that moment used to mean, and what it didn't anymore. She reached the corner, paused at the crosswalk, adjusted her bag slightly, then kept walking, back to her life, the one she built, the one that didn't wait. And somewhere behind her, a man who once had everything figured out was finally learning what actually mattered, not in time to fix it, but in time to understand it. And that understanding stayed. If you made it this far, you already felt it. This wasn't really about revenge. It wasn't about who won. It was about timing, about choices that feel small when you make them, but don't stay small. Sometimes people don't lose what matters because life takes it from them. They lose it because they didn't recognize it when it was right in front of them. And sometimes, by the time they do, it's already built a life without them. So here's the real question I want you to sit with. Have you ever realized the value of someone? after they stopped needing you? Or worse, have you ever stayed somewhere hoping someone would choose you when they already decided not to? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I read them. And if this story stayed with you, subscribe to Mr. Kingswell Stories for more real, human stories that don't give easy answers, but will make you look at life a little differently.